My wife Tessa, 32F, and I, 34M, have been married for 5 years and have a 14-month-old daughter, Lily. Tessa and I met in college. We were both business majors with big dreams. I was the quiet, studious type, while Tessa was always bursting with energy and ideas. After graduation, I landed a job at a tech startup as a junior software engineer, and Tessa went to work for a big marketing firm. We dated for 3 years before getting married. During that time, we often talked about our future. We both wanted children, but we also had career aspirations. Tessa always said she wanted to start her own business someday. I supported her dream, thinking we'd cross that bridge when we came to it. 2 years into our marriage, Tessa came to me with a business plan. She wanted to quit her job and start her own marketing agency. I was hesitant at first. We had just bought a house, and I worried about the financial risk. But Tessa was so passionate and had clearly done her research. We agreed she'd give it a year, and if it didn't work out, she'd go back to a regular job. To our surprise and relief, Tessa's business took off quickly. She had a knack for social media marketing and quickly built a roster of impressive clients. Within 18 months, she was making more than she had at her old job. I was incredibly proud of her success. It was around this time that we started talking seriously about having a baby. We both felt ready, financially stable, secure in our careers, and excited about becoming parents. When Tessa got pregnant, we were overjoyed. During the pregnancy, we had many conversations about how we'd balance work and family. Tessa was determined to keep her business going but assured me she'd scale back. She even talked about eventually working part-time so she could be more hands-on with our child. I remember feeling so grateful that we were on the same page. Lily was born after a difficult 36-hour labor. Tessa was exhausted but elated. Those first few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and diaper changes, but we were happy. Tessa took her planned 3-month maternity leave, and I took 2 weeks off to help. The problem started when Tessa went back to work. Instead of scaling back as we discussed, she dove right back in full force. At first, I didn't say anything. I figured she was just excited to get back to her clients. But as weeks turned into months, Tessa's work hours got longer and longer. I work as a software engineer, and my job is pretty demanding, but I make it a point to be home by 6 p.m. most days. Tessa, on the other hand, is often still working when I get home. She'll pause for dinner and to say goodnight to Lily, but then she's right back at her computer until late into the night. My parents, who live nearby, have been a huge help. They're retired and dote on Lily. They watch her 4 days a week while I'm at work and Tessa's busy with her clients. On the other days, we have a part-time nanny, Mrs. Chen, a kind older woman who adores Lily. I try to spend as much time as possible with Lily when I'm not working, but I'm starting to feel overwhelmed and, if I'm honest, resentful. I've tried talking to Tessa about this several times. Each time, she assures me it's just temporary, she's working on a big project, or it's a busy season. But it never seems to let up. I feel like I'm watching my daughter grow up while her mother misses it all. Last month, Tessa dropped a bombshell. She announced she wanted to expand her business and take on more clients. She talked excitedly about hiring more staff, maybe even opening a small office downtown. When I asked about the hours, she admitted it would mean working even longer and possibly traveling for client meetings. I expressed my concerns about how this would affect our family dynamic, but she brushed them off. She said it was a crucial time for her company's growth and that this could set us up financially for life. I tried to remind her of our discussions during her pregnancy about scaling back, but she said things had changed, her business was doing better than she ever imagined, and she couldn't pass up these opportunities. I felt blindsided. This wasn't what we had planned. I found myself picking up more and more slack at home, doing most of the cooking, cleaning, and childcare when my parents or Mrs. Chen weren't there. Tessa would swoop in for an hour or two in the evening, play with Lily, and then be back on her laptop. Things came to a head last week. Lily had been working on her walking skills for a while, taking a few wobbly steps here and there. I had a feeling she was close to really walking on her own. That day, I asked Tessa if she could wrap up work early so we could spend some family time together. She said she'd try but had an important video call with a potential new client. Sure enough, when I got home with Lily, Tessa was still on her call. I took Lily to the living room to play. As I was setting up some toys, Lily pulled herself up using the coffee table. Then, to my amazement, she let go and took 5 clear steps across the room before plopping down on her bottom. I was ecstatic. I called out to Tessa, but she just waved at me to be quiet. She was still on her call. By the time she finished, nearly an hour later, Lily had walked across the room several more times. When I told Tessa what happened, she seemed more excited about landing the client than upset about missing such an important moment. I finally snapped. I told Tessa that she needed to reassess her priorities and spend more time with our daughter. I said it wasn't fair that my parents and I were doing most of the childcare while she focused on her career. I pointed out all the milestones she'd already missed, Lily's first laugh, her first solid food, the first time she clapped her hands. Tessa got defensive. She accused me of not supporting her dreams and said I was being selfish. She argued that she was providing for our family and that I should be grateful. She even suggested that I was jealous of her success. That hurt. I've always supported Tessa's ambitions, but I never thought it would come at the cost of our family life. I reminded her of all the conversations we'd had about balancing work and family, about her plans to scale back. She dismissed these as naive and said I needed to be more realistic about what it takes to run a successful business. We've been giving each other the cold shoulder since then. My parents have noticed the tension and have offered to watch Lily more often, but I don't think that's the solution. I want Tessa to be present and involved in our daughter's life. I love my wife, and I'm proud of what she's accomplished. But I can't shake the feeling that we're drifting apart, and that Lily is the one who will suffer for it in the long run. I don't want to ultimatum, but I'm at a loss for what to do next. Am I the asshole for telling my wife she needs to spend more time with our daughter? Or am I being unreasonable given that she's working hard to provide for our family? Edit. Some additional context. Before we had Lily, Tessa and I had discussed our expectations for parenting. We both agreed that we wanted to be hands-on parents and share responsibilities equally. Tessa was actually the one who initially suggested she'd work part-time for the first year or two. That's partly why her current behavior is so frustrating and confusing to me. Also, it's worth noting that financially, we're comfortable. My salary covers our living expenses, and Tessa's income mostly goes into savings and investments. So while I appreciate her drive to grow her business, it's not like we're struggling to make ends meet. Update 1. Thank you all for your responses. They've given me a lot to think about. I decided to have another conversation with Tessa, this time trying to approach it more calmly and openly. I spent a few days thinking about how to broach the subject again. I didn't want it to turn into another argument, but I knew we needed to address this issue. Finally, on Friday night, after Lily was asleep, I asked Tessa if we could talk. We sat down in the living room, the same place where Lily had taken her first steps just a week before. I started by apologizing for losing my temper during our last discussion. I told Tessa that I was proud of her achievements and that I didn't want her to give up her dreams. However, I also expressed my concerns about the impact her work schedule was having on our family. I reminded her of the plans we'd made before Lily was born, how we'd talked about sharing parenting duties and finding a balance between work and family life. I mentioned specific moments she'd missed, like Lily's first giggle when I made a silly face, or the time she figured out how to stack her blocks. To my surprise, Tessa didn't get defensive this time. Instead, she broke down in tears. It was like a dam had burst, and suddenly she was sharing feelings she'd been bottling up for months. Tessa confessed that she'd been struggling with postpartum depression and anxiety. She said she threw herself into work because she felt overwhelmed by motherhood and didn't know how to handle it. The more time she spent away from Lily, the more inadequate she felt as a mother, which only made her retreat further into her work. I felt terrible for not realizing this sooner. Looking back, there were signs I should have noticed: her reluctance to be alone with Lily, the way she'd sometimes zone out during family time, her insistence on keeping busy with work. Tessa said she'd been hiding her feelings because she didn't want to appear weak or incapable. She was afraid I'd think less of her if I knew she was struggling to connect with our daughter. We talked for hours that night. Tessa shared how she'd felt an immense pressure to be the perfect mother and successful businesswoman. She'd looked at other mom entrepreneurs on social media who seemed to be effortlessly balancing it all, and felt like a failure in comparison. The more she struggled, the more she buried herself in work, because at least there she felt competent. I listened and tried to offer support without judgment. I assured her that it was okay to feel this way and that we could work through it together. I shared some of my own insecurities about parenting, hoping to show her that it's normal to sometimes feel overwhelmed or unsure. We discussed potential solutions. I suggested she speak to her doctor about her feelings and consider therapy. Tessa agreed but was hesitant about taking medication if it was recommended, as she's still breastfeeding occasionally. We looked up some local support groups for new moms, and Tessa seemed interested in attending. We also talked about practical changes we could make. Tessa agreed to cut back her work hours to a more reasonable schedule. We decided to have dedicated family time every evening and on weekends, with phones and laptops put away. I offered to take on more client communication in the evenings so Tessa could have uninterrupted time with Lily. One thing that came up was Tessa's fear of losing her business momentum. We brainstormed ways she could maintain her success while reducing her hours. The idea of hiring a business manager came up, someone who could handle day-to-day operations and free up Tessa to focus on high-level strategy and key client relationships. By the end of our conversation, I felt like we'd finally gotten to the root of the problem. We had a plan of action, and for the first time in months, I felt hopeful about our future as a family. The next day, we sat down with my parents and explained the situation. They were understanding and offered to adjust their babysitting schedule to whatever worked best for us. We also talked to Mrs. Chen about slightly changing her hours. It's only been a few days since our talk, but I've already noticed a difference. Tessa has been making an effort to be present during her time with Lily. Yesterday, she spent the whole afternoon playing with Lily in the backyard, something she hasn't done in months. There were moments when I could see she was itching to check her phone, but she resisted. We have a long road ahead. I know it won't be easy for Tessa to scale back her work or deal with her depression and anxiety. There will likely be setbacks and difficult days. But I'm relieved we've finally opened up to each other, and I'm hopeful we can work through this together. I'm still processing my own feelings about all of this. While I'm glad we're making progress, part of me is hurt that Tessa didn't confide in me sooner. I'm also dealing with some guilt for not noticing her struggles earlier. I suppose we both have some work to do on our communication. For now, we're taking it one day at a time. Tessa has an appointment with her doctor next week to discuss her mental health, and we're looking into couples counseling as well. We're both committed to making this work, for ourselves, for each other, and most importantly, for Lily. Thank you all again for your advice and support. It really helped me approach this situation with a clearer head and more empathy. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and I wanted to share some developments in our situation. Tessa has been seeing a therapist specializing in postpartum issues, and it seems to be helping. She's been more open about her feelings and is making a conscious effort to connect with Lily. We've established a routine where we have family breakfast together every morning and spend at least an hour playing with Lily before bedtime. It's been wonderful to see Tessa and Lily bonding. On the work front, Tessa has hired a business manager named Rachel. It was a big step for Tessa to delegate some of her responsibilities, but it's already making a difference. She's been able to cut her work hours significantly, and she's home most afternoons now. There have been a few hiccups as Rachel learns the ropes, but overall, it's been a positive change. We've also been attending a parenting class together on Saturday mornings. It's been helpful in building Tessa's confidence and giving us both tools to handle the challenges of raising a toddler. Last week, we learned some techniques for dealing with tantrums, which came in handy when Lily had a meltdown at the grocery store. However, we've hit a bit of a snag recently. Tessa's parents, who live in another state, found out about her struggles with postpartum depression. Apparently, Tessa had confided in her younger sister, Mia, who then told their parents, thinking they could help. Tessa's parents, Gerald and Diane, decided to surprise us with a visit to help out. They arrived 3 days ago and plan to stay for 2 weeks. While I appreciate their intention, their presence has been more stressful than helpful. Gerald and Diane have very traditional views on parenting and family roles. They've been constantly criticizing our parenting choices, from the brand of diapers we use to the way we're sleep training Lily. They seem to think that because Tessa has been struggling, we must be doing everything wrong. What's more concerning is their attitude towards Tessa's work. They've been making pointed comments about how Tessa should be a stay-at-home mom and that her career obsession is harming Lily. They don't seem to understand or respect the work Tessa has put into building her business. This morning, I overheard Diane telling Tessa that real mothers don't need therapy or support groups, they just naturally know how to care for their children. I was furious, but Tessa asked me not to confront her mother about it. The constant criticism has set Tessa back emotionally. She's become withdrawn and is second-guessing every decision she makes regarding Lily. I've tried to run interference, reminding her parents that we're adults capable of making our own choices, but they, especially Diane, can be quite forceful with their opinions. Last night, things came to a head when Diane suggested that maybe Tessa wasn't cut out for motherhood if she was struggling so much. Tessa left the room in tears, and I lost my temper. I told them that their comments were hurtful and counterproductive, and that if they couldn't be supportive, they should leave. Now the house is tense. Gerald has been mostly quiet, occasionally trying to smooth things over, but Diane is alternating between cold silence and passive-aggressive comments. Tessa is torn between defending our choices and not wanting to upset her parents. I can see her slipping back into old patterns, checking her work emails more frequently as a way to escape the tension at home. I'm trying to be supportive, but I'm also frustrated that this visit is undoing a lot of the progress Tessa has made. We had been doing so well, and now it feels like we're back at square one. I'm considering asking Tessa's parents to cut their visit short, but I'm worried about how Tessa will react. She's always been eager to please them, and I don't want to cause a rift in her family. At the same time, I need to protect my wife and daughter's well-being. Tessa and I haven't had a chance to really talk about the situation privately. Every time I try to get Tessa alone, her mother seems to appear, asking for help with something or wanting to show Tessa a better way to do a household task. I'm at a loss for what to do. On one hand, I want to respect Tessa's relationship with her parents and understand their desire to help. On the other hand, I can see how damaging their presence is to Tessa's mental health and our family dynamic. I've thought about taking Lily out for the day to give Tessa a chance to talk to her parents alone, but I'm worried about leaving her to face them by herself, especially given her fragile emotional state. Any advice on how to handle this situation would be appreciated. I want to support Tessa, but I also feel like I need to stand up to her parents' inappropriate behavior. How do I protect my family without causing a bigger rift? Update 3, I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. The situation with Tessa's parents came to a head, and I wanted to share what happened. After my last update, I decided I needed to have a private conversation with Tessa, no matter what. I woke up early one morning, before Lily and Tessa's parents were up, and gently woke Tessa. We went out to the back porch to talk. I expressed my concerns about how her parents' presence was affecting her mental health and our family dynamic. I reminded her of the progress she'd made and how proud I was of her efforts to balance work and family. To my relief, Tessa agreed that their visit was doing more harm than good. Tessa admitted she'd been feeling suffocated by her mother's constant criticism and that it was bringing back all her feelings of inadequacy as a mother. She was worried about confronting her parents, fearing it would damage their relationship, but she also recognized that allowing things to continue as they were would be worse in the long run. Together, we decided to ask her parents to leave. We agreed that I would initiate the conversation, but Tessa would be there to back me up. Later that day, when Lily was down for her nap, we sat down with Gerald and Diane. It wasn't an easy conversation. I started by thanking them for their concern and desire to help, but then firmly explained that their comments and criticism were not supportive and were negatively impacting Tessa's progress in dealing with her postpartum depression. Tessa, showing a strength that made me incredibly proud, spoke up as well. She told her parents that while she loved them, their current behavior was hurting her and making it harder for her to be the mother she wanted to be. She asked them to respect our parenting choices and to trust that we were doing what was best for our family. Diane was initially defensive, accusing us of being ungrateful and insisting that she only wanted what was best for Lily. Gerald, however, seemed to understand. He apologized for overstepping and gently suggested to Diane that perhaps they should head home early. After some tense discussion, Tessa's parents agreed to leave the next day, cutting their visit short by over a week. The rest of the day was awkward, but, thankfully, they left as planned the following morning. Since they left, there's been a noticeable change in our household. Tessa seems more relaxed and confident in her interactions with Lily. We've been able to refocus on our family time and the routines we established before the visit. Tessa has also made a decision about her work. She's given Rachel, her business manager, more responsibilities, allowing Tessa to focus primarily on client relations and strategy. This has significantly reduced her work hours, and she's now home most afternoons to spend time with Lily. We've also started attending a parenting support group together, which has been helpful in building Tessa's confidence and giving us tools to handle the challenges of raising a toddler. It's been reassuring for both of us to connect with other parents who are going through similar experiences. There's still some tension with Tessa's parents, especially Diane. They've been calling frequently, alternating between guilt-tripping and attempting to give more unsolicited advice. We're working on setting clear boundaries with them, which is challenging but necessary. Tessa has been firm about not discussing our parenting choices over the phone and changing the subject when her mother brings it up. Tessa's relationship with her sister Mia has been strained since we found out she told their parents about Tessa's struggles. They had a long phone conversation last week where Tessa explained how Mia's actions, though well-intentioned, had caused problems. Mia apologized, and they're slowly working on rebuilding trust. Overall, I feel like we're finally on the right track. Tessa is more present and engaged with Lily, and I can see their bond growing stronger every day. Just yesterday, Tessa spent the afternoon teaching Lily how to blow bubbles in the backyard. The sound of their laughter was the best thing I've heard in months. We're communicating better as a couple, too. We've started having weekly check-ins where we discuss any issues or concerns openly. It's helping us stay connected and address potential problems before they become big issues. There are still challenges ahead, of course. Tessa has good days and bad days with her postpartum depression, but she's committed to her therapy and support group. I'm learning to be more attuned to her moods and how to support her on the difficult days. I'm optimistic about our future as a family. We're both more aware of the effort it takes to maintain a healthy balance between work, family, and personal well-being. It's not always easy, but seeing Tessa's smile as she plays with Lily, or the way Lily's face lights up when Tessa enters the room, makes it all worthwhile. Thank you all for your support and advice throughout this journey. It's been invaluable in helping us navigate these challenging times.